Woolworths is feeling so patriotic, it's bravely selling the flag for money and launched a new ad packed with Aussie pride.
Come on, guys. Don't wanna feel the shock no more.
Woolworths, we're proud to be Australia's fresh food partner.
Oh, it's nice, but I prefer a swimmer that comes second. If only there was a way I could watch my groceries and that ad at the same time. Oh, wait. Karen, will this Woolies Green strike gold?
The story about Cole Pearce is true, and what it was is that during lockdowns, he couldn't access a public pool to train. There's a few years which are really important for Olympians to actually be able to qualify for the Olympics, so his family turned his dam into a training pool. Beautiful story. The Woolworths rendering of that story is that they're trying so hard to make people have an emotional response. They spent so much money on getting the best production teams in the country to work on this. They bought an Alex Lloyd track. But they, because they don't want to have any negative brand sentiment about Woolworths, they removed anything that might be deemed as negative, including mentioning the part where it's the pandemic and the lockdowns led to this. So when viewers watch it, they struggle to connect to the true story because the true story isn't told. And when you're creating something and you want people to feel, you need to understand the mindset that the viewer is in. What they didn't understand is that they need to have some dark to have the light, and they didn't show the dark. They censored Cole Pearce's story. They censored the part that was his lived truth. That was essentially all our lived truths. So it means that they missed the opportunity to actually land it and to get us to that emotional climax, which I think is a massive shame.
Yeah. You know what he should do? Change his name to Coles Pearce and go to the opposition.
I don't know, Karen. Like, I hear you on the sentiment, and I hear you on them cutting that story short and leaving out COVID because it triggers negativity. But there's a part of me, especially when it comes to the Paralympics, where on some level, for me, the end justifies the means. We're talking about a group of people that rarely get any coverage. And it feels they rarely get any promotion, they get very little money, there's not much behind them. All the focus is on the ableist, or, the able-bodied athletes, because we live in an ableist world. And whenever they get some sort of attention, and it does seem like in the last Olympics, or even the Olympics before, it is kind of switched over, where the advertisers have gone, wait now, the Paralympic stories are even more emotional because they often have bigger hills to climb, so they're getting more of a focus. So there's a part of me that goes, yes, they did not tell his entire story, but I would rather feel something and hear some of his story than none of his story.
So this is an ad for grocery buyers, average consumers, and this is about sponsoring the Olympics. I got lost in the story. If you're a grocery buyer and you go, who's that guy? Is he a farmer? Is he growing salad on the farm? And what are the plastic bottles doing in that? Because no one is going online to research the story behind a 1-minute ad. And I couldn't make the connection between what's Woolies actually doing for the athletes, because, I saw him eat muesli. I mean, if that's the extent, then I'm a sponsored athlete now. So, really, I was waiting for the moment where Woolies tells me what they are doing to enable this athlete to perform better at the Olympics, because that's what you would hope a sponsorship would do.
I think it's important that we publicly support Paralympians. And they may not have had it perfect. I don't think they did. And I think the story is more complicated and needed more story time. But I'd rather them support and be publicly supporting these athletes than not, because that's the other option they have.
Yeah, and I'm not saying that they shouldn't have told his story. I think they got in the way of telling his story. And that's the thing, they didn't tell his story truthfully. And it's a shame, because it's a brilliant story. He is such a great brand person, ambassador to use. Like, he's got the name of an Olympian, like Cole Pearce. It's like he's like got one of those names that are like just a great Australian athlete's name. He comes from a dairy farm in Echuca. Like, he loves drinking milk. He drinks milk after he swims because he thinks it improves his performance. That's why there's so many bottles. Like, And he's like so like lovely, and he's just such a great talent. And I think they just didn't showcase that well enough.
You've really thrown me off tonight. So you don't like the Paralympian ad, but you love the boner ad with James Magnuson.
Yeah, I'm confused too.
I think it's about what it delivers on, and the boner ad hits the audience that it's going after.